And my name is Shawn Fraser. I'm with Pinnacle Health Informatics. Many of you we work with, and many of you maybe are here for the first time. And so we're very pleased that you've taken some time today to join us. I'm also joined today by Gary Clark and Julie Reidman that helped facilitate this webinar. And we're pleased that you're here. Today we wanted to talk about Power BI in behavioral health and talk a little bit about how you can get started and start building dashboards, and an approach that we've kind of used with some of our clients that's been effective to get them up off the ground, or get off the ground and start their journey, and how we've kind of approached that. And we'll do a little bit in Power BI. We foresee this being maybe a multi-part endeavor, and so today would be the first part. We want to focus a little bit on how maybe you could set your environment up, and how that might work out. So with that, we want to get started. And if anyone has any questions, please raise your hand or send the question over, and we'll try to get that answered. We'll also have some time at the end. So welcome everyone. A quick audio check. Is my audio good, Julie? Everything looks good?
Yeah, you sound good.
Great. Thank you. So a little bit just very quickly about Pinnacle. We're a full service analytics, workflow, data warehousing, and training organization. We've been dealing with behavioral health and analytics for over 20 years. And we work with several different electronic data sources, as well as electronic medical records. The number of sources that we integrate grows daily as customers request more and more integration with data. And that's really where the power comes from, is not just the healthcare data or the behavioral health data, but also with the other data sources that agencies work with and utilize. That could be time clock, state reporting, accounting, really anything that's in a modern electronic format that you need to combine with your other data to get a full perspective. We're really happy to answer questions anytime. If anyone ever has a question, we love to answer questions. So if you're a current customer, you know that about us. If you're not a current customer, you don't have to be to get a question answered. We're happy to answer a question and point you in the right direction, especially if it deals with some of the things we're talking about today. So, we really enjoy working in the data realm, especially with the healthcare data. And so we're always interested in new problems and things like that. And if it's just a simple question, like I said, we're happy to answer that anytime. And I'll give you an email address at the end. So I wanted to just give a little bit of an overview about our approach to building dashboards and reports in Power BI for behavioral health. We're going to talk a little bit today about how you can get started kind of more, a little more easily with maybe a sandbox and a practice environment on your own premise, and how it may be a little bit easier to do that. And I'm going to show you a little bit about that. We're going to design a dashboard, and when I say design a dashboard, we're maybe not going to jump right into the tool, but we're going to kind of show you how you might use some documentation and how we would approach that, and we'll fill out a document that kind of will guide us, and then we'll go into building a dashboard with a certified data set. Now, when I say a certified data set, so you can really use data from many sources in Power BI. So if you have a direct connection to a data source, or you have a CSV file, or if you have an Excel spreadsheet, we're going to be using what's called an OLAP cube, which is we think it's really a useful way to structure your data. They're sometimes called XMLA endpoints in Power BI, and it's a pre-compiled, pre-calculated, everything's kind of nicely formatted. Everything's been checked. It's just a drag and drop environment. So it's nice because we know that if two people do the same query, they'll get the same data, right? If they look at data if they look at the same parameters, they'll get the same data. So it's really a one source of truth. And we have these OLAP cubes, but you could really use anything. So if you have a SQL programmer, or if you're a SQL programmer, you can write it in SQL, or you can write it in a multiple of languages. And then we'll deploy that out to the sandbox we're going to build here and kind of show you how that works. So we're just going to kind of step through this, spend a few minutes together talking about this. And again, if any questions come up, anything like that, please don't hesitate to ask those. So Power BI is one of a myriad of tools, right? There's a huge ecosystem out there. It's really one that's been getting a lot of attention lately. Microsoft is putting a lot of effort into it. Its focus is interoperability with lots of different data sources. It has a lot of interactivity. It looks very modern. They do offer a full licensed version of this, and it can be a sizable investment. You can get some what are called the pro level licenses to do some individual work, but it can be sizable. What we're going to look at today is the Power BI report server, which you can download for free, and you can actually demo that for 180 days for free, or you can use it in developer mode indefinitely. You cannot use that for commercial or for go live, but while you're playing around and testing, you can download the Power BI report server. And that's a non-cloud, so it's like an on-premise or in a private cloud. You can deploy that on a Windows box, and you can move your data around and use it kind of on-premise in a more isolated and test environment. And I'll be sending some links out for that. So following kind of the process that we're looking at today, it's more of a simple way to set up a playground or a sandbox, if you will. And it helps you kind of test it out and determine your roadmap. You can always scale up. You can always go to the full paid version if you decide to distribute reports in a full production environment. But it's a nice way to get going. The other thing is you have a chance to develop some of your own data sets. So if you have a sandbox, you can write some SQL queries or import some SQL spreadsheets, things like that, to help you begin developing. So we're going to talk about this in a little more detail. So again, this is kind of a private cloud or an on-premise solution that we're going to be looking at today. And it's a good way to kind of start simply and just play around with it. So some things I wanted to emphasize, if you have an on-premise machine or you have a virtual machine that you can spin up, or even a laptop, you could even do this on your own laptop. If you do have a server, then you can deploy this out and test these reports in a internet environment or a web-based environment with your Power BI dashboards. And so what we're going to look at today is we're just going to look at a system that is it's SQL Server Developer Edition, or you may have a full version that you can use, where you've installed Power BI Report Server, and that was installed in development mode. And again, I can send some links out for this. You can also do it in a 180-day trial. The 180-day trial is kind of a full version that is time limited. The development mode does not time out, but it is limited through licensure to just development and testing, right? Which is what you're probably going to want to do initially, is just build some proofs of concept. You do have to have a special version of Power BI Desktop for report server. The cloud-enabled version doesn't work with the on-premise Power BI report server. So there's a special version, and we'll look at that here in a moment. And then you'll need a data set, right? Whatever data you can get your hands on. There's sample data sets, I think, built in. You can download. There's tons of tutorials online. Microsoft has a guided learning environment. You can download spreadsheets. Anything that will get you kind of playing with the data and building this in a practice environment is really going to accelerate your efforts. If you have VMware, you can download the VMware Player for free from VMware. Most I think Windows 10 has a Hyper-V. You can have a Hyper-V guest if you want to put a virtual machine out there. So you can build yourself a sandbox without too much effort that you can use to kind of get yourself going, get your feet wet in Power BI. So, and like I said, I'll send out some links for these. Some skills that are really important. I think the core skill really for anybody who's interested in data, and many of you may have these skills, but structured query language, knowing how to get data in a format that can be used, right? You don't have duplicates, you have the right aggregations. You don't have any strange data anomalies, and your structured query language is really going to be the foundation, I think, of a good business intelligence approach with Power BI. And many of you have that, I'm sure. So that's probably resonating with you. There's some other languages that are great, some other skills that I think are super helpful. If you have, that's wonderful. If you don't, there may be something to think about getting some more exposure to. The language that we use on our OLAP cubes is called MDX. That's another language from Microsoft, and that stands for Multidimensional Expression Language. The newer one that is big in Power BI is the DAX, the Data Analysis Expressions, and they're similar. They're all about getting data together and aggregating it. If you're good at Excel, that's a great source too. A lot of people like to use Excel and get their data prepped in Excel, and then hook it up to Power BI. A word processor, maybe not as necessarily for data, but we're gonna look at a word processor today and how that fits into the flow, the workflow. Visio is sometimes nice for dashboard mockup, although there's a lot of other simpler tools. I know there's a new one that Microsoft has. It's called Rhino, or it's free, but these are nice for mocking up your dashboards. And then the one thing that's just really important is if you decide to work on Power BI dashboards and reports, I think frequent practice and repetition is really essential. It's hard to build something and then go back 3 weeks later. It's really something that every day, some people build a dashboard a day, right? That's one thing I've tried to do in the past, or one dashboard a week, or 2 dashboards a week. Just build something that you can practice your skills. It doesn't have to be fancy, but just get in there and do something frequently so that you can start to build and hone your skills. There's lots of Power BI structured learning. You go on YouTube. There's a person or a team that I like to watch. It's called A Guy in a Cube, and it's from Microsoft, and they do daily, if not more frequent, videos. There's lots of discussion groups, books, like I said, built into Power BI. There's a structured learning system complete with data sets. And the key is to really just get in there and practice. So I think that's really important. Okay, so let's kind of get down to it here. I'm going to bring up a sample document, and we're going to look at how we would approach an issue. So we want to build a dashboard. And so what we would do is we would get out our dashboard specification document. Hopefully everyone can see that okay. This is just a template that I like to use that helps guide us through this. So we're gonna say, what is the name of the report, right? Well, it's called My First Dashboard, Basic Metrics in Power BI. Okay, pretty simple. The narrative description. This is a simple dashboard that's going to show encounters, provider hours over time. The visuals can be filtered by fiscal year. We will also want to see the breakout of service items for those time frames. Okay, that's just kind of a narrative description. My audience will be for general users. What tool do I want to use? Oh, I'm going to use Power BI, right? You could use SQL reporting services. You can write dashboards in Excel. You can use, I mean, there's 100 different tools. But we're going to use Power BI. What will be measured? Well, we're going to look at encounters, provider hours, properly adjudicated for groups, and number and types of services for a given time frame. What dimensions are included? And we'll be using a certified OLAP data cube focused on services and visits. We'll need a fiscal year from what's called a date dimension, which you'll see when we demonstrate this, and service type item from the services dimension. We'll also use the service visit measures table for the number of encounters and provider time. So to summarize, we're going to use the service visits measure group. We're going to use encounters and provider hours. And then from the service visit dimension, we're going to use the service item or service value from this particular EMR. And then from the service date dimension, we're going to use service fiscal year and service date. So a simple report, but it's good to get things kind of documented and make sure everyone's in agreement on the different elements. Time elements and aggregations, again, service fiscal year. Let's see, indicators or color rules. We want the color to change to indicate the various service items. And then we just want to make sure that charts and time series need to be in the proper month order. And if possible, and we get some ability to do it, we would like to drill to the service level detail. This may be something that we'll cover in our next one, doing some drill downs or drill throughs. But a lot of times, you know, it's very common that people want aggregate data and fun colors and indicators, but then we want to drill to the service level detail and see that granular detail. Let's see, drill down detail. Oh, there we go. Services with date, time, service item. Parameters, any parameters? Oh, we're going to look at fiscal year. We want to be able to change the fiscal year. We're going to use our certified OLAP cube, and it's going to be called, I think it's going to be called OLAP DW is the name. You may want to put a name if you have an official name for that data source. And then anything else to exclude, if any, none. Goals or performance measures, if any, none on this one, but that can be a common item. Need for trend indication. If we can put in like an average or a forecast. Even we can use some of the built-in AI and machine learning and put in a trend line. And then where will the report be accessed? Over the web, in the EMR, other. Oh, it's going to be used over the web via Power BI report server. Okay, great. So we're going to use our Power BI report server and distribute this Power BI dashboard on our intranet over the web. Okay, other considerations, there aren't any. And there's a note here that says also, please fill the scan or attach a copy of a sketch of an imagined report layout, which is optional. But that's always a great idea. It's always a great idea to add a picture. So I've done a little picture here in a Word. It took me 5 minutes to just kind of lay this out using the Smart Art, I think is what it was, in and some charts. I could put some sample charts in there using just the built-in images from Word. And this is sometimes helpful. You can even just sketch this if you want. Okay, so that would be just a mock-up, right? You can even do this on the back of a napkin. You can do it on a piece of paper. I've even told individuals, just sketch it on a piece of paper and take a picture with your phone and text it to me. You know, just something so I can say, hey, I get what you're trying to look at. I get what you're trying to see with your dashboard. So we have encounters, a couple of charts at the top. This is going to be a tree map here on the bottom, and then we'll have a filter for the fiscal years. So pretty straightforward, pretty simple. So a mock-up. So we'll go back to our Word document here. So that would be, so you'd attach a description of that, and you could give that to the person building it, or you'd ask somebody to give that to you. And again, this is a great document that, like I said, we'll send out a blank one of these if you're interested in having that. Okay, let me go back to my spreadsheet here. Okay. All right, so that's the mock-up. Okay, so let's go into building this out in Power BI. So we're going to go ahead and I've launched a new instance of Power BI here. And this is what you'll see. This is the Power BI Report Server edition. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to get some data. So we're going to go and get some data, and we're going to get some data from analysis services. And so the OLAP cubes live in analysis services. And so we're going to have access to cubes that deal with appointments, with services, with financial information, anything that could possibly occur in the agency. And we're going to take a look at these, and we're going to do a live connection. Now, again, you can use any kind of data that you want, right? You could have a SQL query that you've written. You could have a spreadsheet. You could build a data model. This is just the one that I'm going to use right now, and it's what's called an OLAP cube. It stands for Online Analytical Processing, and it's really nice because everything's pre-calculated and pre-compiled, and everything that we need is there. No one's having to write formulas on the fly. Everything's in the cube, and it's just a nice, clean way to get the data. So we're going to look at what's called the client visit cube. Okay, we're going to grab that, and we're going to pull that in, and it's going to connect up. It's going to take a second. Okay. Now, if we look over here on the right, we can kind of isolate this here. You're going to see all the different things we have in this cube. So we can look at client data, we can look at medical profile measure data, all of the medical profile information, program information, length of stay, client distinct count, client visit data regarding units and rates and things like that. Employees, we can look at the employee distinct count. All these up at the top, these are what we call our measures. It's things we can measure. And you can see the icon is a little bit different from this point here, from employee distinct count up to client distinct count. So those are our measures. I wish Microsoft would have chosen a little different icon because it looks very similar to the ones below here. And these are our dimensions, right? This is what we can slice and dice our data by. Client information, medical profile dimension, team information, visit date, etc. So what we talked about in our document is we want to look at encounters, and we want to look at provider hours, right? So we want to look at the client visit, what we're calling our client visit distinct count, and we're also going to want to look at client visit measures, and we're going to want to look at provider duration in hours, okay? And then we're also going to want to look at the time. And so from our document, we know that we're going to look at those two measures, but we also want to look at the client visit date dimension, which gives us all of our dates and information to roll these up. So when you're building your data sets, you need to think about all these things. You know, I got to have dates in there. I got to have different measures, get my data all prepped and ready to go. So I'm going to use, on this one, I'm probably going to use my year, month, okay? So I've got those ready to go. And now all I have to do is start picking my visuals here. I'll open my visuals pane, and I want a couple of line charts. I'm going to click on my line chart. Oh, there it goes out into the design surface. I can resize that a little bit. I want another one. Now, the trick here is you got to make sure that you're not selected, right? And those of you who've used it have known that, have seen that. If I have it selected and I click something else, it changes my chart, right? It changes my chart. So I have to make sure that I'm not selected when I pick a second one. So I want to do a second line chart. I'm going to bring it up here. We can get those so they're nicely formatted together. That's great. Now, I'm also going to want to add a filter on this. So, or a slicer they call it. I'm going to put a slicer right here, and that gets set right there. So I want to set my slicer. I want to be able to slice to, and if I go back to my document, I'm going to set that to the fiscal year. And so I have my client visit fiscal year value, and I have my slicer selected. I'm just going to pick that. And that's going to build my slicer, which is nice. It'll take a second. Now, you can do this fancy drag and drop thing that they have, which is kind of fun. Or you can do a drop down. I'm just going to do a drop down. So I can come up here, pick the drop down. And then I'm going to kind of make that a little bit smaller. We'll put that down here. Okay. Now let's get some data into my line charts. Get these. Okay. And I'm going to pick, let's pick 2020. Oh, okay. And so it'll pre-filter that data. So I want, in one of those, I want my client visit. I want my encounter. I want my client visit distinct count, which is ready to go. So I've got the chart selected. I'm going to pick my visit distinct count. Well, that doesn't look very interesting because it's just a single dot, right? That doesn't tell me anything. Well, I've got to add some dimensionality to that. So I need to add my client visit year, month. So if I select that, you can see got some data there. And you can see here that they had a little drop in the counts there. They've had some fluctuation, as you can imagine, based on the year 2020, as they got their telemedicine set up, and things got a little bit of a drop. It doesn't go all the way to 0, but we've got a range here from 29,000 to 24,000. Now, the nice thing about Power BI is we can go in and we can modify colors and date ranges and labels and everything. And we'll do more of that. I just wanted to kind of get something out there so you guys could see this. All right, so that looks great. So that's for 2020, and as my filter, it'll change, right, as I modify that filter. You can see the years will change on that. So I'm going to go ahead and do my second one. And my second one was service provider duration hours. Same thing. I need to pick my measure and my dimension. And now I've got a chart by month for fiscal year 2020 for the two things that I wanted. Now, I probably need to go in and make all the labels look nice and maybe change the color to a color palette that we want. But you can see we're starting to kind of get things put together. And it's very fast, right? If you got your data prepped, it's very fast, and you can start creating very engaging reports quickly. So I also wanted to see my service items broken out, and I want to do that in a tree map. So I'm going to make sure nothing's selected, right? I can't select anything because it'll mess it up. Make sure nothing's selected. I'm going to put my tree map over here. Let's make my. I'm going to make my filter here a little bit smaller. It'll let me. Let's see. There we go. A little bit smaller. I move my tree map over here. And now what I want is I want to say, okay, I want to see provider hours. Actually, let's do hours by the service item or the visit value. And we're going to go down here and we're going to change this to our client visit dimension. And we're going to look at, we're going to look at the service value, it's called in this cube. And that's going to be Let me use visit type. Let's do that. Okay, so now you can kind of see in a tree view how all of our appointments or all of our provider time. So it looks like we got some residential services, which is taken a lot. We can pop that out, take a little bit more close look at that. And we could filter out, the bed days or the other kind of long, the multi-hour services to kind of get a little bit better look at this. But you can kind of start to see the breakdown of the service. So that's what we wanted to see, right? And this does an automatic coloration, but we could change the colors, and we can come in here and we can have control over every aspect of these elements. So just like that, we've got ourselves a little dashboard, right? That's completely usable. And we could do drill downs, and you could do mouse overs. You can do all kinds of things where you can create all kinds of interactivity. So with that, we're now ready to deploy it. Any questions or comments about that? Okay, so let me show you where we're going to deploy it to. So this is in preparation. I have set up the Power BI reporting services portal. So this is just in developer mode. I just downloaded it. It was very straightforward to install. I do need a SQL server somewhere. You can be a development version of that too to host the databases for the Power BI. It stores everything as an XML format in those databases. One nice thing about this is it does a lot more than Power BI. So we're going to see we're going to be able to put in Power BI reports. There's a mobile report builder you can utilize for this. You can use traditional SSRS reports. You can build data sets, data sources. You can even build cool little KPIs in here, and you can tie them to your data set. So if you can even direct people here just to look at some trending and some KPIs if you wanted to, if you didn't want to use a full-blown Power BI dashboard. But you can deploy these here. So you can even deploy Excel workbooks here. It's kind of amazing what this will do. Again, like I said, this is for proof of concept, but you can do it locally and get started and start practicing. So we're going to go over here to our dashboard here that we just built, and we're going to save it to the Power BI server. And it's going to look just like this. I'm going to do save as Power BI report server. We're going to tell it where it is. We're going to say this is my first dashboard. We're going to say okay. Saving my first dashboard to Power BI report server. Success. Take me there. Well, we don't need to do that because I have it open already. So we're going to go back here. We're going to refresh it. There it is, my first dashboard. So now you have your Power BI dashboard out on the web, on an internet, most likely, on an internet, or an internet, most likely, or an internal network, a private internet. And we can click on that. And this is going to load up the data. And we're going to have a web version of our Power BI dashboard that we just built. And it's coming up here. Oops, 2016, probably not the year we want. Let's go back to 2020. And there we go. Deployed out to your Power BI report server. Again, there's a cloud version. It's more complicated. You have to build data gateways to get your data up to the cloud. It's a little bit more to do. It's very feature rich, of course. But you do have some additional things you have to do. Doing it this way with just kind of that developer version of Power BI report server lets you keep everything internal. You're not moving any data off-site. everything's just still on premise. So you could actually give somebody a link and they could go ahead and take a look at this dashboard. And you could start from there, building additional items. Let me go back to our presentation now. And let's wrap up. Okay. Okay, so here's the summary of part one. This was today. So this is what I've kind of emphasized, is setting up an environment to practice and to test with. And if you want to use the cloud, that's great. The one I've demonstrated is an on-premise one that you can download the pieces at no cost for a test environment. When you're ready to scale out, you can scale that out, and you can go to the full cloud version if you want at any time. And I have a question here from Bobby. So no, you can do tables too. You can do tables. And I should have probably shown a table. I can do that next time on our next webinar. But yes, there's a table visual in there, and so you can do tables as well, as well as data visuals. And there's just hundreds of visuals you can use. So that's a really good question. So you can scale out as needed. The key is to design and practice frequently. That's really the key, right? If you're going to be a Power BI report builder, get into it and use it all the time. Use it as frequently as you can. Utilize the free and online resources. There'll be a recording of this meeting we'll put out there. We'll add some additional online resources as well. You can always ask me a question or any of us a question. We're always available, customer or not. If you just say, hey, how would you recommend we do this or that? I'm happy to answer that. You can email us at info@phidw.com. We also have a website. We're also on social media. We post pretty frequently around on social media. But that's really what I wanted to cover today. We're going to do some additional webinars on this. We'll do some more advanced things like geospatial type stuff. We'll do some mapping to latitude and longitude. We'll do some drill downs. We'll do some drill throughs. We'll do some advanced stuff. But the key is to kind of get a place where you can practice. So all this I've shown you can be downloaded, like I said, for a test environment for free. While you give it a go. With that, I appreciate everyone being here. Anyone have any questions or anything they'd like me to discuss? I hope everybody's found this useful, and that you've been able to it's been a meaningful time. We look forward to talking with you again. And if you have any questions in the meantime, please don't hesitate to get with us. We've really enjoyed presenting. Thanks, everyone.